Gurmahugad Sheila. And the books are for sale. Joe has been selling them all week, but there's a few left, Joe, and I'm not bringing them back to Dublin. There was something.
One for everyone.
Yes, Joe, thank you. Oh yes, I am the last speaker. I have the honour. That could be very good or very bad, but I better watch my time. But is that okay? Okay, now. The world is undergoing a paradigm shift. The world is undergoing, as Sheila's mentioned, my background is in finance and economics, and I run innovation programs at various organizations now. The world is undergoing a paradigm shift from an industrial or manufacturing age of goods to a learning, innovation, or network age dominated by intangible services. An industrial enterprise, which is indicated on the left here by some, I just wanted to give you some examples, is wedded to rationality and control rather than emotions, feelings, empathy and relationships, characteristic of a learning organization. Fostering meaning, delivering experiences and nurturing identity replicate the role that selling physical goods played in the industrial economy. Scientific knowledge operates in the area of information and rationality, while literature and the arts are in the provinces of understanding and wisdom. Understanding lies beyond intelligence. It's about conceiving, anticipating, valuing, and judging. Wisdom is informed by purpose, ethics, memory of the past, and projection into the future. While information is mechanistic and abundant, wisdom is holistic, conceptual, and scarce. Meaning emerges from rootedness, from a strong sense of place, founded on memory, tradition, and belonging. Value, and I've spent the best years of my life teaching financial markets about value, maybe money value, but as you'll see, I integrate the two. Value rises as meaning deepens, as knowledge moves from information to understanding and wisdom, illustrated, as you see on the right-hand side, in digital media by content, patient tacit knowledge in healthcare, originality in crafts, local expertise in food recipes, and traditional practices in farming. The quality of knowledge depends on a point of view or cultural perspective, and is now more important in business than ever. IT companies spend more on the symbolic or design-driven aspects of their products than technical development, an insight missed, unfortunately, by the government's recent smart economy document. In innovation, while research or information relayed by computers does matter, it is meanings, experiences and identities that matter most. Policies that recognise the nature and feelings of a people provide a powerful advantage. Ireland's distinct cultural resources, used properly to mediate between the local and the global, would provide this country with an inimitable competitive advantage. Sustainable competitive advantage, and as you can see, I put 3 M's together to capture what I'm talking about. The value system used in economics, and I've spent many years in economics departments, is extraordinarily crude and narrow, with little role for imagination or mystery. Some economists see rootedness as the opposite to innovation or against innovation, with erosion of a sense of place often cited as an indicator of confidence and independence. Yet an emerging paradox is that in a world of global markets and high-speed communication, location and culture are becoming more, not less important. Advantage lies in difference, captured by special places and shared values. As Harvard's Michael Porter argues, enduring competitive advantage lies increasingly in the local. The more complex and dynamic the global economy becomes, the more likely this is true. Sustainable competitive advantage comes from resources unique or difficult to imitate. Tangible resources such as money and technology are necessary, but they're not sufficient. Intangibles such as human, cultural and social resources founded on capabilities and relationships are essential. Tacit resources such as imagination, intuition, inspiration, ingenuity, sense of self, self-assurance, self-confidence, and self-knowledge are crucial. Such resources are least susceptible to imitation, most valuable, and rooted in the social and economic fabric of local relationships. Being distinctive, thinking differently, and having different information enable a community to be creative and innovative. Innovative places provide an integrated ecosystem where all forms of creativity, artistic and cultural, technological and economic, take root and flourish. A place that succeeds emphasizes culture, attracting and keeping creative people to the qualities of a diverse, authentic and unique community. This in turn attracts enterprise and business, reversing the traditional direction of development. Unlike the past, and unfortunately many of our policymakers are thinking in the past when they talk about high tech and innovation. Unlike the past, where reducing business costs or clustering companies in industrial estates was key, a unique innovating milieu that fosters resourcefulness now ensures a country, region, city, county's long-term competitiveness. Back to the future, and many of the speakers spoke about the past, so I'll spend a little bit of time. Contemporary Ireland is badly in need of the driving vision that characterised the Irish revival, an exhilarating mix of cultural renaissance, idealism and self-reliance, encompassing a range of innovative initiatives in commerce, agriculture, theatre, literature, sport and language, all related to a common theme, an awakening interest in Irish identity, broadly defined. The notion that cultural self-belief is fundamental to economic development was its vital informing principle. But as P.J. Matthews of UCD points out, the revival is often portrayed as a purely mystical affair, characterised by nostalgia and obsessive anti-modern traditionalism. The Gaelic League, and I've listed some of them, the cooperative movement, the GA, the Abbey Theatre, and various national history societies attracted an eclectic array of individuals involved in projects across a wide spectrum with a sense of identity and national purpose bounding them in a common enterprise. Cooperative organisers, sceptical farmers, idealistic patriots, language enthusiasts and literati of all stripes contributed to the exciting mosaic of the time. This vision was never articulated as one seamless manifesto. Still, there existed certain common characteristics across all organisations. Foremost was self-reliance, or character, and the notion that the responsibility for development resided in Irish, not foreign, at the time British, hands. Shared identity and sense of place were prerequisites for the development of character, an imperative for innovativeness. Horace Plunkett, founder of the cooperative movement, saw commercial ethos, moral courage and thrift as core elements in his vision of this movement. Character was also at the core of the Gaelic League, the intellectual and industrial movement that fostered use of the Irish language and supported native literature and the arts. Central to its philosophy was an insistence that the Irish personality could not reach its full potential except within a cultural milieu proper to it. It held that creative personalities cannot be produced without an integrated community having a unique and continuing experience of its own. Accept it, we are now in a completely different political and technological and social context, but it is essential to recapture the spirit and excitement of the revival. The diversity that constitutes Irishness is a potential source of enrichment through cross-fertilisation, both north and south of the border. While a once thriving scientific community was in decline by the time of the revival, natural history was vibrant, especially in the northeast of this island. Much of this work was stimulated by the same motivation as the revival, an explosive interest in things Irish and a patriotic urge to provide an identity for Ireland while rejecting models imposed from outside. Take, for example, Belfast-born naturalist Robert Lloyd Prager, a great hero of my own. Natural history shares characteristics with folklore collecting and involves an obvious local component, so it fits well into the broad concept of Irishness central to the revival. In the nationalist tradition, the relationship with landscape, for example, is through Dean Hianicus, the lower of place names. Prager, coming from sciences like geology, botany, ornithology, etc., and from a tradition that occupied the land for a shorter period, held a different but just as authentic sense of place. David Landis of Harvard concludes in a groundbreaking book, The Wealth and Poverty of Nations, quote, "If we learn anything from the history of economic development, it is that culture makes all the difference," end quote. Culture is a core pillar, and many people said it today, of France, a country whose humanist ideals and cultural nationalism independent Ireland was meant to be based on. Italy also illustrates the importance of culture and meaning as a competitive strength. Italian design is impossible to imitate, a heritage of arts and craft resources developed over generations, a critical innovative resource. Nordic countries long recognised cultural rejuvenation as essential for national self-reliance, with rootedness providing a quality, aspirational work ethic and empowered innovative community. Danish education is deeply influenced by the 19th century Grundtvig folk high school concept, which communicates a deep purpose, awakening pride in national culture while refusing to devalue other cultures. Love of learning that continues long after a student is finished with formal study. In Finland, a country I've taught in for many years, Ireland is often urged to emulate dynamic integration into the global economy. Strong national sentiment, a unique language, and closeness to nature represent important sources of meaning. That word meaning is central to my message. Irish commentators focus on that country's huge R&D spend, but do not appreciate that strong affirmation of its culture is the key, and might similarly be a driver of innovation in their own home. Ireland's heritage provides an ideal base for creativity. And some of these points were made before, but I'd put them together in an economic context maybe. Ruptured roots, a historical tragedy, without any doubt, now offers the benefit of double vision, a critical resource for creative endeavour. Different traditions lead to diversity in meanings. Idergá cultúr, as Declan Kybert of UCD puts it. This divided mind, poet Thomas Kinsel's expression, can be seen in the work of artists like Robert Balla and Louis Lebarque. The conventional practice of separating the artist and the thinker, imagination and reason, runs counter to the distinctive nature of the Irish mind, again was mentioned earlier. This combines both the artistic and analytical, the emotional and irrational, disorder and order, what one writer called chaotic. And if you want a good example, look at Joe. That is a chaotic mind, chaos and order. As they say, fitte fuite. But it is an innovative mind and a creative mind because they are both always order. I've seen it for last week, God knows. Balancing science and technology with a tradition of metaphors, narrative, stories and mythology offers a huge competitive advantage for this country. Fostering both the scientific mind of separability and rationality with the spiritual. Irish mythology, for instance, which is not linear, but has a meandering interconnectedness, is ideal for an emerging sustainable age, whereas I have argued earlier, empathy, meaning and relationships are the most critical innovative resource. E. Eston Evans said, quote, "It is at the fences along the borders that discoveries are likely to be made," end quote. Binding the arts and sciences closer together harkens back to the inherent creativity of the Irish literary and artistic tradition. There were no divisions between art and science, mathematics and music, when Irish monks founded schools of learning all over the country and the continent during the Dark Ages. However, Ireland's current innovation policy focuses on scientific research based on objectivity, denying the legitimacy of the subjective world of feeling, ignoring or distinct and most valuable resource, a sense of connection and the imaginal life. Innovation is really about stories, and the Irish are the world's greatest storytellers. The scientific mind simplifies and narrows experiences into manageable principles, whereas the arts emphasize complexity, crucial if imagination, intuition, inspiration and innovation are to flourish. This country has natural advantages for the learning age, but these will only be realized if the artistic is combined with the scientific. interpreted through the prism of Irish culture and tradition. Back in the early 60s, Córas Tráchtála turned to eminent Scandinavian designers for advice on improving industrial design in Ireland. They found the best designed products, those with the greatest chance of competing on international markets, were craft industries successfully interpreting the Irish tradition. Their report, which had enormous impact on subsequent design in Ireland, cautioned against our national propensity for shallow utilisation of foreign models and urged particular attention be paid to national characteristics that would enable Ireland to market something out of the ordinary, something with a distinctive Irish quality. Language is not just about communication, but also about cultural transmission and memory. Eminent physicist David Bowen points out a flaw with thinking in atomistic and objective terms, hallmark of science, due to the fragmenting tendency of English. The Irish language can be an especially potent resource for nurturing sensitivity to difference, meaning and aesthetic qualities. We squander such self-resources at our peril. I should have shown that one, by the way. Sorry, but I think everything is... here's a picture of Lamass from 1963's Time magazine, which is quite instructive, I think. While T.K. Whittaker and Sean Lamass, mentioned many times this week, were responsible for transforming the Irish economy, embracing the world, a strong cultural perspective was at the root of their vision. Few commentators stress this, and it is ignored by policymakers. To quote Whittaker himself, English does not carry all our traditions, all the emotions and aspirations we have experienced as a people. If as a result of indifference the Irish language were allowed to die, the loss would be irreparable. We would have cut ourselves off from an invaluable heritage and made ourselves even more vulnerable than we are already to absorption into an amorphous Anglo-American culture. End quote. Having a vision. My argument is no exercise in dreaming nostalgia or an attempt to turn back the clock to some perceived pure and idyllic golden age. It's a thesis light years away from Eamon de Valera's notion of frugal self-sufficiency. Yet it does share a similar appreciation, as de Valera did, of the value of indigenous resources. And the reason I put this up is to compare. And in rushing over, excuse me a second. Can I have this? I want to compare this picture from the cover, as you can see, from a statistical report of 1949. Now, you may laugh at it and say, oh, it's romantic Ireland's de Valera. I think people make fun sometimes. I talk about dancing at the crossroads. But if you look at what was on the cover of the CSO bulletin of 1949, I know Fianna Fáil weren't in power at the time, but the point was it captured in many ways. That is the cover of On Board Snip. Now, look at this. All right, it does. I know we've moved on in many ways, the role of men, but look what is on it. Look at the vision it covers. It covers a vision of, to be perfectly honest, in Ireland that is in many ways incredibly attractive, of people, I would have thought, being content. All right, you know, the woman is doing the knitting or whatever it is, and the man is doing the studying. You know, I'm talking about something. I'm talking about, look at the vision in terms of commerce and industry, and the sense of resources, the fields, the commerce and the... This is a different mind. Sorry, Joe. Far from representing dead artefacts that are anti-modern and non-economic, cultural resources represent dynamic and unique sources of competitive advantage. The idea that a strong identity is opposed to materialism, the profit motive, technological innovation and modernism reflects an unfortunate legacy of the elites who governed the state over the first decades. In the space of 80-odd years, we have moved from one extreme to another, from a place where culture featured prominently in the national vision to the opposite, where science, rationality and markets dominate. We must harness the positive elements of both, or special circumstances, which I presented earlier in this talk, present opportunities for emphatic relationships with, we must harness the positive, or special circumstances present opportunities for emphatic relationships, with countries who, like ours, suffered the humiliation of colonisation. No nation can be truly innovative if its people do not know who they are, where they come from, and where they're trying to go. Prospering in a multicultural world requires individuals that understand their own culture. Grounded this way, they appreciate diversity and the cultural values of others with whom they must cooperate. While remaining open to outside influences, they learn to identify difference and appreciate distinctiveness. They absorb different ideas, yet are not dominated by globalized cultural influences. This is what generates an innovative mind frame. I conclude with this quote from former chief art critic of the Irish Times, Brian Fallon, which I think neatly captures my own sentiments. And I'd like to see, I hope you have enough time to read it. Revolutionary, in my view, yet realistic changes, especially in education and enterprise policy, are needed to grasp opportunities that, while rooted in place, could create an Ireland globally competitive and self-reliant, utterly unique, while eminently cosmopolitan, anchored by meaning, comprising people of all traditions, sharing a common commitment to place. Now is the great time to begin. And by the way, if you don't really understand what I've been talking about when I talk about the relationship between, think again of the McGill Summer School. Nobody's sort of in charge, even Joe himself, even though he looks like he's in charge. It works as an ecosystem. And Joe himself mentioned earlier the relationship, but it is based on the value. And you think of the value, and this paper was all about value. The value is in how people interact. No matter how much science or research or technology was developed, it still wouldn't create the value we saw this week. So value, which is what I've been talking about, and meaning, do not come from the rational. They come from in my view, the relationships I explained tonight. So, Tom Anbueker, Eishivlum, August, Tom Anbueker, the Joe, Goruk Shanstum, Talked, Erfana Shafton, August, Lord, Gurmila Mahagav Blair.